Jackson Reed checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The quarterly board meeting had run 2 hours over schedule. He still had 3 calls to make before his flight to Tokyo. At 43, he'd built Zenith Enterprises into a global technology powerhouse through relentless drive, brutal efficiency, and an uncanny ability to predict market shifts before they happened. "Mr. Reed, your car is waiting," his assistant Thomas announced, hovering in the doorway. "Tell Franklin I'll be down in 2 minutes, and reschedule the Tokyo meetings. Not flying tonight." Thomas nodded, knowing better than to ask questions. Jackson's sudden changes of plan were legendary, and usually ended with acquiring another company or launching a product that left competitors scrambling. The corner office on the 57th floor offered a panoramic view of the city he practically owned. 3 skyscrapers bore his company logo, and a 4th was under construction. The financial district hummed with his influence bankers, who feared his calls, developers who courted his investments, politicians who accepted his donations. Jackson gathered his documents and slid them into his leather portfolio. His phone buzzed with a message from his brother, Daniel. "Dad's birthday dinner tonight. Please try to make it this time." Jackson frowned. He'd forgotten. Again, he typed a quick reply, promising to be there, though both knew it was likely he'd find some reason to be absent. As he had been from most family gatherings since his divorce 5 years ago, the elevator descended swiftly to the private garage where his driver waited with the door open on a sleek black Bentley. "Home first, Franklin. I need to change before dinner at my father's." "Yes, sir." The usual route. Jackson nodded, already absorbed in emails on his tablet. The car glided into the evening traffic, Franklin expertly navigating the crowded streets. The rain had started, making the roads slick and the lights of the city blur into watercolor streaks against the windows. Jackson barely noticed, absorbed in projections for the Singapore expansion. He only looked up when he heard Franklin swear at something the professional driver had never done in 7 years of employment. A delivery truck had run a red light, skidding sideways across the intersection directly in their path. Franklin swerved, but the wet pavement offered no traction. Jackson felt the strange weightlessness of the Bentley sliding. Then the world became a cacophony of screeching metal, shattering glass, and the sickening crunch of impact. The airbag deployed with explosive force. Jackson's last conscious thought was oddly peaceful, wondering if anyone would water the single orchid kept on his office, WINDOWSILL. When the emergency services arrived, they found the billionaire tech mogul unconscious, blood streaming from a head wound. The paramedics worked frantically, stabilizing him for transport. Male, early 40s, severe head trauma, possible internal bleeding, the lead paramedic reported as they loaded him into the ambulance. At Mercy General Hospital, the staff prepared for the arrival of one of the city's most powerful men, but to the trauma team, he was simply a critical patient hovering between life and death. "Get neurosurgery down here, stat," Dr. Westfield ordered as they wheeled Jackson through the emergency department doors. Hours of surgery followed. The news spread quickly. Jackson Reed, the ruthless visionary behind Zenith Enterprises, lay in a coma, his condition critical and uncertain. His family gathered in the private waiting room, his father Robert, stoic and silent. His brother Daniel, handling the press with practiced calm. His ex-wife Vanessa, who arrived despite their bitter parting, her eyes rimmed red. None of them could have guessed that in the sterile quiet of the intensive care unit, Jackson Reed would soon begin a journey far more transformative than any business venture he had ever undertaken. Olivia. Carter hadn't planned on becoming a specialized care nurse. 10 years ago, she'd been a promising pianist with a scholarship to Juilliard, but life had other ideas. When her mother was diagnosed with early-onset dementia, Olivia deferred her music dreams to care for her. Those 3 years before her mother, past had shown her a different kind of calling, the healing power of presence. Now, 34, Olivia was known throughout Mercy General for her unconventional approach to comatose patients. While most saw them as medical challenges, she saw them as people suspended between worlds, still capable of receiving compassion. "You've been assigned to the Reed case," head nurse Patterson informed her, handing over a thick file. "Private." Room, round the clock care. The family's sparing no expense. Olivia nodded, skimming the medical details. Any family visitors I should coordinate with? His brother stops by daily, father twice weekly. His wife came once, hasn't returned. Then there's the parade of executives and lawyers. Patterson replied with a raised eyebrow. They're more concerned with power of attorney than his recovery. When Olivia first entered room 412, she was struck by the contradiction. The most advanced medical equipment money could buy surrounded the bed, yet there was a sterility that went beyond hospital protocol. No personal items, no photographs, nothing to suggest the man beneath the bandages had a life beyond his public achievements. Jackson Reed's face was partially obscured by medical tape and bruising, but she could see he had been handsome in a sharp, intimidating way. His file listed him at 6'2", though he seemed smaller, somehow vulnerable in hospital-issued clothing. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," she said, checking his vitals. "I'm Olivia. I'll be your primary nurse going forward." Steadily in response, Olivia continued speaking as she worked, explaining each procedure, the weather outside, small observations about her day. Many of her colleagues found this habit peculiar, but studies supported her belief that comatose patients could often hear even when they couldn't respond. "Your brother brought some toiletries yesterday. The aftershave smells nice. Sandalwood, I think. We'll use that after your sponge bath today." Days melded into a routine. Morning care, medication, physical therapy to prevent muscle atrophy, position changes, more medication, evening care. Throughout it all, Olivia talked read news articles about technology and business that might interest him, and sometimes just sat quietly, holding his hand during her breaks. 1 week into her assignment, she brought a small Bluetooth speaker. "Neurology department has some interesting research about music therapy for coma patients," she explained to Jackson's silent form. "I thought we might try it." She played classical pieces at first batch Mozart Chopin. On her third night shift, during a particularly quiet 3 a.m., she connected her phone and played a recording of herself at the piano, a Debussy piece she'd performed years ago. "I still play when I can," she told him, adjusting his at professionally. "Of course, but music stays with you." His brother Daniel arrived the next morning as Olivia was changing the bandages on Jackson's healing surgical wounds. "You're new," he observed, setting down his briefcase. 2 weeks now," Olivia replied. Olivia Carter. Daniel studied her with eyes remarkably similar to his brother's. "The staff says you talk to him constantly." "I do. There's significant evidence that auditory processing remains active in many coma patients. Does it actually help? Medically?" "Sometimes. But I believe it always matters to treat someone like they're present, not just a body in a bed." Daniel's professional facade cracked slightly. "What do you even talk about with him?" Jackson's entire life was work. I doubt he'd care about hospital gossip. Olivia considered this. "Yesterday I read him the Wall Street Journal and quarterly reports from his company. But I also told him about the family of ducks that's nested in the courtyard fountain. Humans need more than spreadsheets, Mr. Reed, even unconscious ones." To her surprise, Daniel laughed a short, rusty sound suggesting it wasn't a frequent occurrence. "You clearly never met my brother when he was awake." As weeks turned into months, Olivia learned more about Jackson through the rotating visitors than she ever could from news articles. His assistant Thomas brought work updates but also revealed that Jackson secretly funded a technology education program for underprivileged youth. His father mentioned his son's childhood passion for building models. His ex-wife Vanessa, who eventually returned for a second visit, described a man who had once known how to laugh before ambition consumed him. Olivia began bringing her tablet to play chess against an app during her shifts, explaining each move to Jackson as though they were playing together. "Your company is developing an AI that can beat grandmasters," she told him. "But I'm just trying to remember how the knight moves." 3 months after the accident, Olivia arrived for her shift with a small, portable keyboard. "It's my birthday," she explained to her patient. "I always play on my birthday. I hope you don't mind sharing the celebration." She positioned the keyboard near his bed and began to play softly. I had a classical piece this time, but something original, something she'd composed over the years of hospital nights and quiet mornings. As the gentle melody filled the room, she didn't notice the almost imperceptible movement of Jackson's fingers against the sheets, or the slight change in his brain activity on the monitors, the first signs that somewhere in the darkness, he was beginning to find his way back. The first thing Jackson Reed became aware of was delicate piano notes floating through darkness. Not recorded music, but live, with slight imperfections that made it human. The second thing was a dull, throbbing ache behind his eyes. The third was a voice, feminine and warm, speaking to someone he couldn't see. His brain activity has been increasing for 3 days now. Dr. Westfield says it's promising. Jackson tried to open his eyes, but his eyelids felt sealed shut. He attempted to speak, but no sound emerged. Panic rose in his chest. He who commanded boardrooms and bent markets to his will couldn't even open his eyes. The music stopped abruptly. "Mr. Reed, Jackson, can you hear me?" He focused all his energy on his right hand, willing his fingers to move. Something warm enveloped his hand, another hand. "If you can hear me, try to squeeze my fingers." It took tremendous effort, but he managed the slightest pressure. "That's it. You're doing great. I'm going to call the doctor." The next hours were a blur of medical personnel, tests, and examinations. Jackson drifted in and out of consciousness, catching fragments of conversations about remarkable recovery and cognitive assessments. Through it all, one voice remained constant, anchoring him, the same voice that had apparently been speaking to him for months, on what he later learned was the 4th day after showing signs of consciousness. Jackson finally managed to keep his eyes open long enough to focus on the woman sitting beside his bed, reading aloud from what sounded like a financial newspaper. Tesla shares dropped following delays in their autonomous vehicle rollout. ... His voice emerged as a rasp, barely audible. The newspaper lowered, revealing a woman with warm brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wasn't conventionally beautiful by the standards of the women he typically associated with, but something about her face seemed instantly familiar and trustworthy. "You're awake?" Her smile transformed her entire face. "I'm Olivia Carter, your primary care nurse. How ... long?" Each word required enormous effort. "You've been in a coma for just over 3 months. There was an accident. Your car was hit by a delivery truck." Jackson closed his eyes, processing this information. 3 months. A business quarter. Singapore deal would be. Don't try to talk too much. Olivia interrupted his thoughts. "Your brother has been notified. He's on his way." When Jackson next awoke, Daniel was there, looking simultaneously relieved and uncomfortable in the role of emotional family member. "Welcome back to the land of the living," his brother said, attempting levity. "You missed quite a bit too. Product launches, a minor scandal with the board, and Dad's birthday dinner. Again." Jackson tried to smile, but managed only a grimace. "The company." Daniel sighed. "Of course, that's your first real question. Zenith is fine. Thomas has been running interference like a champion. Your executive team stepped up. The world didn't end without you, though the stock did take a hit when news of your accident broke." Over the following days, Jackson's medical team explained the extent of his injuries and the long recovery ahead. Physical therapy, rehabilitation, possibly months before he could return to work full-time. "Unacceptable," Jackson whispered to Daniel when the doctors left. "Arrange for private rehabilitation at my penthouse. Need to get back to Zenith." "Actually," came Olivia's voice from the doorway, "that won't be possible for at least 6 weeks. Hospital policy for traumatic brain injury patients." Jackson turned to her, ready to deploy the cold stare that had made junior executives quit on the spot. "Oh." But something in her direct, unintimidated gaze stopped him. "You've been unconscious for 97 days, Mr. Reed," she continued, checking his 4. "Your muscles have atrophied despite our best efforts with passive movement therapy. Your brain is still healing. Rushing this process won't help your company, will only delay your full recovery." Daniel looked between them, surprised. "She's been taking care of you since week 2, Jackson. If anyone knows your condition, it's Nurse Carter." Later, when Jackson was alone with Olivia during her evening shift, he studied her as she adjusted his monitors. "You played piano?" he said suddenly. Her hands stilled. You remember that? Not visually? I heard music. Real piano, not recorded. Olivia's face brightened. Yes, I brought in a keyboard sometimes. There's research suggesting familiar activities from caregivers can help coma patients. What else did you do while I was away? She looked slightly embarrassed. I talked to you a lot. Read you the business news. Played chess well, narrated chess games, and kept you updated on hospital gossip. Why? The question seemed to surprise her. 'Cause you're a person, not just a patient. Everyone deserves human connection, especially when they're vulnerable. Something about her answer disturbed Jackson deeply. In his world, vulnerability was weakness, and weakness was exploited. Yet this woman had seen him at his most helpless, and responded with ... kindness, not for profit or advantage, but because she believed it was right. As days passed, and his strength gradually returned, Jackson found himself looking forward to Olivia's shifts. She treated him normally, not as the billionaire tech mogul, not as a fragile patient, but simply as Jackson. She challenged his impatience, celebrated small victories like standing unassisted, and made him laugh with stories about the hospital's eccentric characters. One evening, she helped him with his walking exercises in the private rehabilitation room. He asked, "Why nursing? You have the talent for a music career." Olivia supported his weight as he took careful steps. Life happened. My mother got sick when I was 22. After caring for her, this path felt right. Do you regret it? She considered this seriously. Sometimes I wonder about the road not taken. But then I have moments like when you first squeezed my hand that confirm I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Jackson found himself watching her hands as she recorded his vitals capable. Gentle hands that had cared for him when he couldn't care for himself. Hands that had played music to lead him back from darkness. That night, unable to sleep, Jackson realized something that would have been unthinkable before the accident, for the first time in decades. Zenith Enterprises wasn't his first thought upon waking, or his last before sleeping. Instead, he found himself waiting for the sound of Olivia's footsteps in the hallway, the simple magic of being seen, truly seen by someone who had known him before he had anything to offer in return. 6 weeks into his recovery, Jackson Reed was becoming a different man, or perhaps, as Olivia sometimes suggested during their increasingly personal conversations, he was remembering the man he had been before success hardened him. "Mr. Reed, your 9 o'clock is here," announced Nurse Patterson, sounding distinctly unimpressed. Jackson looked up from the tablet where he'd been reviewing physiotherapy exercises. His private room had gradually transformed into a satellite office. Despite Dr. Westfield's protests about stress impeding recovery, Thomas entered, followed by 3 executives in impeccable suits. The contrast between their corporate precision and the medical environment was jarring. "We've prepared everything for the video conference," Thomas explained, setting up a laptop. "The board is concerned about the Miller acquisition timeline." Olivia, who had been adjusting Jackson's medication, exchanged a glance with him that spoke volumes.
How long is?
They'd argued about this meeting, his first formal business engagement since the accident. She thought it was premature. He insisted it was necessary. "I'll leave you to it," she said, her professional tone masking the familiarity that had grown between them. As she reached the door, Jackson called after her. "Nurse Carter, thank you. It wasn't just for leaving them privacy. It was for everything, for the chess games she'd narrated while he was unconscious, for the music that had guided him back, for treating the imperious CEO like a human being capable of growth." The meeting proceeded with typical corporate efficiency: revenue projections, competitive analysis, strategic initiatives. Jackson participated with his trademark incisiveness, though he tired more quickly than he would have admitted. After the executives departed, Thomas lingered. "The PR team needs direction on the public narrative for your return," he said cautiously. "There's been speculation. Some unflattering..." "What kind of speculation?" Thomas hesitated. "Rumors that your cognitive functions might be ... compromised." Bentley sent over the repaired watch from the accident as a goodwill gesture. He placed a box on the bedside table. "The crash made the business news again this morning." Jackson opened the box to find his platinum Patek Philippe. restored to perfection, except for a hairline crack across the crystalla, permanent. A reminder of how quickly everything could change. And there's this, Thomas added, placing a tabloid on the bed. The headline made Jackson's stomach clench. Billionaire's bedside romance. Reed's mystery nurse captured on camera. The grainy photo showed Olivia helping him into the garden courtyard, her hand supportively at his elbow, his head bent toward hers in conversation. The image was innocent, but the implication was clear. "Handle it," Jackson ordered, his voice returning to the cold tone of the boardroom. The usual way. Thomas nodded and departed. Alone, Jackson stared at the photograph, feeling worlds collide. The man who had awakened to Olivia's gentle voice and the ruthless CEO who protected his empire couldn't coexist indefinitely. Later that afternoon, Olivia entered his room with a storm brewing behind her usually calm expression. "You had no right," she said without preamble. "You'll need to be more specific. Your people just informed me I'm being reassigned to another floor, effective immediately." A conflict of interest, apparently. Her voice remained professional, but hurt radiated from every word. "They also had me sign confidentiality agreements about your treatment." Jackson maintained his neutral expression, a mask he'd perfected in countless negotiations. It's standard procedure. "For 3 months, I talked to you when no one thought you could hear. I played chess against myself, pretending you were my opponent. I brought music because I believed it might reach you when words couldn't." She placed a patient file on his bed. "And now I'm a liability to your public image." Olivia's nurse. "Carter, Mr. Reed, as you've reminded me, we have a professional relationship." She straightened her shoulders. "Your new nurse will be excellent. Nurse Winters has 20 years of experience with rehabilitation patients." Before she could leave, the door opened again. Richard Prescott, Jackson's head of security, entered with 2 assistants. "Sir, we need to discuss the transportation arrangements. For your discharge next week, the penthouse has been prepared with medical equipment, and we've hired private nursing staff." Olivia's expression flickered with something unreadable before her professional mask returned. "I'll leave you to your planning." After she departed, Jackson found himself staring at the door, an unfamiliar heaviness in his chest. Richard continued, outlining elaborate security measures for the hospital departure, media statements, and the carefully orchestrated return to public life. "We've prepared a statement regarding the tabloid photo," Richard added. "A simple denial of any improper relationship, emphasizing your gratitude to the entire medical team without singling anyone out." Jackson nodded absently, the words washing over him. From his window, he could see the hospital courtyard where he and Olivia had walked just yesterday. She had pointed out the family of ducks he now realized she must have told him about during his coma. "Your brother called," Richard continued. "He's concerned about the board meeting scheduled for your first day home, he thinks." "Cancel it," Jackson interrupted. Richard blinked in surprise. "Sir, cancel the board meeting, and the security detail, and the press statement." "But sir, the speculation doesn't matter." Jackson turned from the window. "Get Thomas on the phone. I need to change some arrangements." Evening, Jackson navigated the hospital corridors alone, having dismissed his hovering assistant. He found Olivia in the staff break room, nursing a cup of tea and studying a medical journal. "Nurse Carter," he said from the doorway. "May I speak with you?" She looked up, surprise quickly replaced by wariness. "Mr. Reed, should you be walking unassisted? Probably not. Another rule I'm breaking." He sat across from her, moving with the deliberate care of someone still healing. "I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. That's not true, and we both know it." He placed a small wooden chess piece at night on the table between them. "Do you know what I remember most clearly from the coma? Not the business news or the medical updates. Remember you describing chess moves, explaining how the knight moves in an L shape, unlike any other piece." Olivia's expression softened slightly. Before the accident, Jackson continued, "I measured everything and everyone by their utility. What they could do for me, for Zenith. 3 months in darkness changed that perspective. Traumatic experiences often shift our priorities," she replied carefully. "This wasn't just trauma, it was you." He leaned forward. You saw me as a person when I was nothing but a body in a bed. You gave me dignity when I had nothing to offer. No one has done that since my mother died. Olivia set down her cup. What are you trying to say, Jackson? I'm saying I'd like to know the woman who saved more than just my life. Not as my nurse, not as an employee, as Olivia. He smiled slightly. The pianist who plays Debussy at 3 in the morning and talks to ducks in the courtyard. Tabloids, your company? The carefully managed public image? For the first time in my life, I don't care about any of that. He stood, wincing slightly at the effort. Yeah, I'm being discharged next Tuesday. Instead of going back to my penthouse, I'd like to have coffee. With you at that cafe you mentioned, the one with the ridiculous pastry names? Olivia studied him, searching for the calculating businessman she'd glimpsed earlier, finding instead the vulnerable patient who had first squeezed her hand after months of silence. Tuesday's my day off, she said finally. I know. I checked your schedule. At her raised eyebrow, he added, Some habits die hard. As he turned to, Leave, she called after him, Mr. Reed Jackson. The cafe gets crowded. The press might see us. He paused in the doorway. I'm counting on it. The whimsical Bean Cafe buzzed with Tuesday morning regulars when Jackson arrived, leaning slightly on a sleek carbon fiber cane that somehow looked more like a fashion statement than a medical necessity. He'd chosen to dress down a casual, button-up and jeans, instead of his trademark bespoke suits. Still, heads turned as he entered, recognition dawning on faces. He spotted Olivia at a corner table by the window, reading a paperback with a cup of tea steaming beside her. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of the practical style she adopted for hospital shifts. She looked up as he approached, her expression guarded yet hopeful. You came, she said, marking her place in the book. Did you think I wouldn't? Settled into the chair across from her, noting how strange it felt to sit in a public cafe, something he hadn't done in years. Always opting instead for private dining rooms or catered meetings. I thought your team might talk you out of it, she gestured to his attire. No security detail? I gave them the day off. His mouth quirked. Though Thomas is probably having a panic attack right now, the barista approached, wide-eyed upon recognizing. Jackson, Mr. Reed. Welcome to Whimsical Bean. What can I get you? Whatever she's having, he replied, nodding toward Olivia's cup. Chamomile tea? Olivia asked, eyebrow raised. The titan of tech drinks herbal tea? I'm branching out, he answered, with unexpected lightness. Doctor's orders to avoid caffeine for another month. After the barista left, a slightly awkward silence fell between them, no longer nurse and patient. Not quite friends, definitely not colleagues. So, Jackson finally said, tell me about the pianist who became a nurse. The tension eased as Olivia spoke about her childhood in a small coastal town, her music scholarship, her mother's illness that had redirected her path. Jackson listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he'd been paying attention during those one-sided conversations in his hospital room. Your turn, she said eventually. Tell me something about Jackson Reed that isn't in the business journals. He considered this seriously. I wanted to be an architect when I was younger. I used to sketch buildings that could touch the clouds. What happened to that dream? My father happened. Reed men build businesses, not fantasies, he quoted, his father's stern voice momentarily echoing in his words. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease, interrupted only when a young couple asked for a selfie with the famous Mr. Reed. Jackson obliged with more grace than Olivia had expected. You're different here, she observed after they left. More accessible. I had 3 months to think while lying in that bed, he replied. About the man I'd become, about the walls I'd built. Outside the cafe window, a photographer pretended to be interested in the building across the street while clearly angling for shots of them. Jackson noticed Olivia's eyes tracking the man. Does it bother you? He asked, being seen with you? Or being photographed without consent? Both. She considered this thoughtfully. I'm a private person by nature. But I'm not ashamed of being here with you, if that's what you're asking. He reached across the table, his hand stopping short of hers. I've given Thomas instructions to protect your privacy as much as possible, but I can't control everything the media does. I never expected you could. She surprised him by closing the distance, her fingers lightly touching his. I just don't want to be a footnote in the great Jackson Reed recovery story. Is that what you think this is? Before she could answer, Jackson's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the screen and frowned. The board is calling an emergency meeting. Apparently our little coffee date has already hit social media. Sighed the stock prices responding, unfavorably. Olivia withdrew her hand. You should go. No. The firmness of his response surprised her. Your company needs you. Zenith has survived 3 months without me. It can survive another hour. He silenced his phone and placed it face down on the table.
I think this is more important.
They left the cafe together, ignoring the no-obvious photographer. Jackson suggested a walk through the nearby botanical gardens, neutral territory where they could talk without the pressure of either of their worlds intruding, among the carefully tended flowers and winding paths. Jackson spoke of his plans for the future. Not the corporate strategies or market expansions, but personal intentions. Reading more. Reconnecting with his brother beyond business matters. Learning to play an instrument. Piano, Olivia asked with a smile. I was thinking drums, actually. Maximum noise, minimum skill required. She laughed, the sound genuine and unrestrained. Jackson found himself memorizing the moment's sunlight filtering through trees. The scent of gardenias and Olivia's laughter bridging the gap between his past and whatever future might be possible. Their peaceful interlude ended.
When Jackson's driver called, clearly flustered.
Sir, the press is gathering at your penthouse. Mr. Prescott says there's a situation at headquarters requiring your immediate attention. Reality intruded once more. Jackson looked at Olivia apologetically. The real world beckons, she said, understanding in her eyes. Come with me, he suggested suddenly. Not to the office, I wouldn't subject you to that Shark Tank yet, but to the penthouse. Let me show you where I live. Who I am outside the hospital walls. Olivia hesitated. Is that wise? Probably not, he admitted. But wisdom isn't what brought us here. The drive to Jackson's building was tense with unspoken possibilities. Franklin, the driver who had survived the accident with minor injuries, kept glancing in the rearview mirror, clearly curious about the woman who had captured his employers. Attention. As predicted, photographers clustered near the building entrance. Jackson's security team created a path, professionally shielding Olivia from the worst of the commotion. Inside the private elevator to the penthouse, she finally spoke. Is your normal? People chasing you with cameras? Fame was never my goal, just a side effect of success. He studied her. Second thoughts? Several, she admitted honestly. But I'm still here. The penthouse was exactly as she had imagined from the business magazines, minimalist, expensive, impressive, and strangely impersonal. No family photos, no mementos. Just carefully selected art and design pieces that spoke of wealth rather than warmth. It's very, you Olivia observed, diplomatically. Jackson laughed. It's very old me. I've been thinking about changes. He led her to the wall of windows overlooking the city. From this height, the hospital where they'd met was visible in the distance. I've had a lot of time to think about what matters, he said quietly. Before the accident, I measured success by acquisitions and market share, by how many people feared my next move, and now I measure it differently. He turned to face her. By genuine connections, by whether my actions build something meaningful beyond the bottom line. That's quite a transformation for someone the business world calls the shark. Nearly dying will do that. Stepped closer. So will having someone see you at your worst and treat you with dignity anyway. His phone interrupted again this time with his brother's ringtone. Jackson, Daniel's voice came through clearly on speaker. The board is in full panic mode. Phillips is threatening to call for a vote of no confidence if you don't address them today. Tell them I'll be there in an hour, Jackson replied, his eyes never leaving Olivia's. After ending the call, he said, This is my reality. Crisis management. Power plays. People who see weakness in any sign of humanity. And my reality is night shifts, modest apartments, and patients who need more than medicine, she responded. Our worlds are very different, Jackson. They don't have to remain separate. He took her hands in his. The man I was before the accident would have seen these differences as insurmountable. He would have calculated the cost-benefit analysis and walked away. And now? Now I understand that some things can't be quantified on a spreadsheet. His voice softened. You taught me that, Olivia. Every time you played the piano for someone who couldn't applaud. Every time you spoke to me when I couldn't answer. She looked down at their joined hands. I'm not asking you to choose between your company and whatever this is between us. It would be unfair to both of us, I know. He gently tilted her chin up. I'm asking if you'll help me build a bridge between these worlds instead. Not overnight, not perfectly, but intentionally. Outside the windows. The city continued its relentless pace. Inside, time seemed suspended as they stood at the crossroads of possibility. I still have to finish my nursing shift tonight, she said finally, a smile playing at her lips. And you have a board to reassure? Is that a yes? It's a beginning, Olivia answered, her eyes reflecting the same hope that had sustained them. Both through months of darkness, and for now, that's enough. Later that evening, as Jackson stood before his board of directors, still using his cane but straight-backed and clear-eyed, he spoke with the authority that had built his empire, but with a wisdom that had been absent before. Gentlemen, ladies, I understand your concerns, he began. But today marks a new chapter for Zenith Enterprises. We will continue to lead our industry not just through innovation and market dominance, but through purpose and connection.